zoom down the M23 towards the town of Falmer, where we will be hosted by Brighton and Hove, actually Albion. Kick-off is at the right and proper time of 3 p.m. on a Saturday. And if you're going by train, there doesn't appear to be any engineering works on the list, so enjoy. Kippers for breakfast in the dining car is the order of the day, I'd say. So, Brighton and Hove, etc, etc. It's been a bit of a meh season for them, really. Every so often there'd be a glimpse of a potential European slot, only for the next few games to go all a bit Tottenham, and the only beaches in sight being those shingle ones, with the remnants of a defunct pier sitting a few yards offshore. Their recent form has been a case in point. Cast your mind back to March, where, on the 8th of that month, they completed a 2-1 home win over Fulham. That win was their fourth in a row, and left them taking the risk of having a walk to the end of the pier that remains, to look hopefully in the direction of Le Continent. Well, I say pier, it's not exactly Southend in length, is it? However, since then, things have been, well, a little bit wobbly. A 2-2 draw away at Manchester City was creditable enough, I suppose. However, they were swatted away 3-0 at home by Villa. They followed this up by losing 2-1 at Palace, which would have caused some sort of upset to those who take their made-up rivalry that seriously. Then it returned to Falmer, where they drew 2-2 with Leicester, conceding the first 2 goals that Leicester had scored in something like 13 hours. Then last week they went down 4-2 away to a Brentford side on a 3-match winless streak, and who hadn't taken 3 points at home since the start of December. The way things are going, they may well usurp our reputation for being the team that you need to play should you have a sequence that needs busting. All that has seen them drift from 7th to 10th with 48 points from the 33 games played so far. That's 3 places and 9 whole points shy of Aston Villa, who currently occupy the 7th spot that is likely to constitute the final European qualification place. Though it should be said that the Seagulls do have a game in hand over the Villains, though both Fulham and Bournemouth are filling the gap between the two sides. As you might expect from a club which has a quasi-mathematical algorithm-based transfer policy, whatever that is, they did dip a toe into the market during the January window. Daisy informs me that the first arrival was Paraguayan midfielder Diego Gomez. Gomez arrived from the ludicrously named Inter Miami for a fee of some £14 million. He's been capped 13 times by the Paraguayan national squad, and his first goal at that level was one to tell the kids about, being as it was the only goal of the game as they beat Brazil in a World Cup qualifier. Next to arrive was central defender Erin Cashin, who arrived from Derby for a reported fee of £9 million, as Derby sought to cash in on the 23-year-old. Sorry about that. He was Derby's Young Player of the Year in each of the last 2 seasons, and also made the PFA Team of the Season for League One last season. He's been capped at age level by Ireland, qualifying in the usual manner through an Irish-born grandmother. He's been used sparingly so far, having made just the one appearance as a substitute in the blue and white stripes of Brighton. We won't be seeing the final signing they made. 19-year-old Greek under-21 international Stefanos Tsimas was on loan from PAOK to Nuremberg in the second division of the Bundesliga. Nuremberg exercised their option to take over the economic rights to the player, then immediately sold him to Brighton for a fee of just under £21 million. Brighton then immediately loaned him back to Nuremberg, so in the space of a few minutes the player had been on the books of 3 different clubs without actually moving an inch. Enough of them, hey? Let's move on, shall we, to the wild and wacky world of association football. Supporters up and down the country were hit the highest state of confusion as Arsenal shot themselves in the foot again to confirm what the rest of the world had worked out ages ago, namely that their title challenge was but a figment of their imagination. The confusion amongst supporters arose due to the fact that, hilarious as Arsenal's capitulation to Palace was, did effectively hand the title to Liverpool, whose title ratification against Tottenham will be accompanied by a request for another 20 medals to distribute to PGMOL, whose officials have assisted them so much this season. In other words, nobody knew whether or not to laugh or cry. I sat back and consoled myself watching Burnley beating Sheffield United, with the Blades taking their failure to gain automatic promotion with their usual sporting good grace, with players having to be dragged off the pitch at Turf Moor at the end. Now that was funny. Let's move on to us then, shall we? There's been much comment in the media over the comments made by the BFG post-match after the debacle that was the Southampton match last weekend. Depressingly and somewhat predictably, certain sections of the media came at the story from a very obvious angle, trying to throw in an element to the debate that simply didn't exist. Sky in particular were jumping on the bandwagon, holding a poll with the clear intention of having a headline published along the lines of "Hammers fans slam Fulkrug" once the dust had all settled. Things were primed with a couple of third-rate pundits in the form of Jay Bothroyd and Jamie O'Hara, whose own playing careers can best be described as journeymen who lucked out. They got all angry on our behalf, suggesting that the BFG wasn't entitled to an opinion on the grounds that he hadn't had much of a season, largely ignoring the fact that major injuries had played in his state of affairs. Then Sky released the poll. Only we didn't play ball, did we? I think it was 91% of those responding actually agreed with Fulkrug. I mean, who'd have thought that the opinions of people who go week in, week out might be informed on the basis of what they see every week? Better informed, one might say, than the ramblings of two ex-players whose punditry actually makes their careers look glittering. The fact is that, unhelpful as Mr. Potter found the public nature of Fulkrug's outburst, his comments were as accurate as they were honest. Indeed, what the BFG said was pretty much word for word what I had in mind for this part of this week's preview, albeit with a slightly less Teutonic accent in mind when reading it out into this dictation machine contraption. In any situation where something isn't right within a group, sometimes it needs the new boy to come in and point things out that the wider group haven't considered, and that's precisely what happened here. The fact that, largely through no fault of his own, he's not been able to set the world on fire doesn't invalidate his opinion on what he's seen any more than the opinions of those of us who watch the same thing would be invalid. I certainly value that opinion over those of a couple of players whose sole insight seems to be bobbing around the Championship and making appearances on Celebrity Big Brother, a programme I understand that is aimed primarily at the hard of thinking. On the injury front for this weekend, we're likely to see the return of Wan-Bissaka, who should have recovered by the weekend. Antonio and Somerville will of course be out of action, and the game is a week or two too early for Cresswell to be considered for a return to the squad. Ferguson will be unable to face his parent team, whilst Alvarez will also be missing, a back injury being the official reason for his absence. So to the prediction then. Well, they're out of form, we're rarely in form at the moment. Looks like a draw to me all the way. So the £2.50 I was going to spend on buying a leaving present for Jamie Vardy, I suspect it would all just go on his legal bills anyway, will instead be wagered on a scoreline of 2-2. All yours, Mr. Winston. Enjoy the game.